folks, this is Jess from Cook Smarts, and today I'm going to tell you 5 little cooking secrets your mother never told you. These 5 little cooking secrets are going to ensure that your cooking is going to be elevated to a whole other level and make all of the dishes you make incredibly delicious. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first little secret I've got for you is important if you're going to be cooking meat. Meat is unfortunately something that does take a little bit of time to get flavor. So if you're just going to take it fresh out of the package and salt it and then cook it right away, you're not going to get a lot of flavor in that meat. It's going to taste a little bit bland. What you need to do is season that meat, tenderize it, and let it sit overnight. And this goes for chicken, beef, or pork. Okay? So here I've got some chicken thighs, and I've just taken them out of the package, and I'm not going to make them till tomorrow. But what I'm going to do is give them some time overnight to get lots of flavor from the seasonings I'm going to put in now. All you really ever need is salt and pepper to start with. So I'm just going to give it some real generous sprinklings of kosher salt. I always keep a bowl of kosher salt nearby. A couple turns of fresh ground pepper. And then in my family, we like using garlic powder. I know it's not for everybody, but we quite enjoy it. So I'm just going to be sprinkling a little bit of that on as well. You can also use a little bit of sugar, and the sugar is really there just to add a contrast. Okay, and then the tenderizing process. What we do is we just take a fork and we just kind of stab at the meat, which creates some pores for all of this seasoning to get absorbed. Okay? So you can do this with, again, chicken, steak, pork, same process. When you come home, go ahead and take it out of the package and season it up the night before you're going to cook it to ensure that that meat is really flavorful and juicy. Okay, so we're ready for secret number 2. Secret number 2 involves oil, and since pretty much every time we cook, we're going to be using a little bit of oil, this is a pretty important secret to know. Okay, so what it involves is making sure that your oil is hot for whatever ingredient you're going to put into it. Heat what cooks the ingredient after all. So you want to make sure that the oil is hot. So how do you tell if the oil is hot? So what you're looking for with the oil to know that it's hot is when you tip the pan back and forth, you start to see striations in the oil. So basically what I'm looking for is almost like if I'm tipping a wine glass, I'm looking for the legs of that wine. So here the oil is, you can start to see a little bit of texture in there because it's already pretty much warmed up, which means it's ready for the next ingredient. So that's how you tell if the oil is hot enough for the ingredient to be put in. Because if it's not warm enough, that ingredient is just going to be sitting in the warm oil versus cooking in the warm oil. So I'm going to go ahead and get my sliced onions cooking in. Are you ready for secret number 3? So in secret number 2, we showed you how to make sure the oil is warm before we put in our ingredients, and then we put in our onion strips for our caramelized onions. As you can see, this pan is starting to get a little bit dry, and that often happens whenever you're sauteing something. There's just not enough moisture or not enough oil, and that is not your mistake, so do not worry about that. All you need to do to make sure it does not burn is add a little bit of moisture. So just keep a little Pyrex of water or broth, whether it's vegetable broth or chicken stock, near your cooking area, and just put a little bit of water in there. Usually like a tablespoon or 2 at a time, so it doesn't get too much water and get, actually too much liquid in there. So usually a tablespoon at a time is perfect until it gets dried up again, and then you can add more. This also gives you a chance to deglaze the pan, which is good. There's a lot of brown bits on the bottom of the pan that we would love to get scraped up and incorporate those flavors into whatever we're cooking. So by adding a little bit of liquid and using either a wooden spoon or a spatula or something that's nice and heat-proof, these tongs are great, you can just kind of scrape up the bottom of the pan for any brown bits that might have occurred during the cooking process. Alright, so that was secret number 3. Remember just to add a little bit of moisture in the form of water or stock to whatever you're cooking if the pan looks a little bit dry so it doesn't end up burning. Alright, this is actually a bonus secret, okay? One thing that a lot of folks don't like to do is salt their pasta water heavily. This is pretty important because the pasta itself is quite bland. And if all you're doing is putting a sauce over it, it gets the flavor of the sauce, but the pasta itself doesn't get any flavor. So what you have to do is really salt that water so it tastes like the ocean, okay? I always keep a can of just coarse sea salt around. It's pretty cheap sea salt. And I give this about 2 to 3 to 4 wrist turns, okay? And that usually gets it nice and salted. You might need more for a larger pot, but use your judgment, but you do want that water to be heavily salted, so when the pasta goes into that boiling water, it gets a little bit of that flavor from the water. All right, are you ready for secret number 4? Oftentimes what's missing in a dish is a little bit of acid at the end. All right, really kind of rounds out the dish, creates some contrast with the other flavors, and really brightens up the other flavors in it. So what I have here is a pan of pasta. And I'm going to go ahead and squeeze some lemon juice into it. I know that's not very conventional when you think about pasta, but really this lemon juice is going to bring this dish together. So I'm just going to squeeze half a lemon with this little citrus squeezer I've got over it. Mix it up. And that's really going to change the flavor of that dish. Oftentimes what's so great about pasta when we eat out is in most restaurants they're going to be putting a little bit of lemon juice at the end of that pasta dish to finish it off, which is why it tastes so great. So try doing this at home. And it's not just in pasta, it's just in most dishes. Taste at the end. If you feel like everything's a little bit flat, brighten it up with some acids. That could be a little bit of vinegar, red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, sherry vinegar, or of course lemon or lime juice. Okay, so the last secret that I think is one of the most important in cooking that a lot of home cooks seem to overlook is how to use salt. You should be salting throughout the cooking process because it takes a long time for flavor to build. Just like we season those chicken breasts the night before, it's the same thing throughout the cooking process. You want to give as much time as possible for flavors to develop. Okay, so I've got a hot pot of oil here. I'm going to be making a soup. So every time I add an ingredient to this soup pot, I'm going to put a generous pinch of kosher salt in here. So the first thing that's going to go in are my onions. And once those onions go in, I put a pinch of kosher salt in there. We're going to wait for those onions to saute for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll add our next ingredient. And of course, with that next ingredient, we're going to also add a pinch of kosher salt. Okay, so it's been about 3 minutes. Our onions are sauteed down, they're a bit soft. So the next thing we're going to do is add our sweet potatoes into the pot. So when I put in a new ingredient, I'm going to naturally reach into my little bowl of kosher salt and give it a nice pinch and mix it up. So whatever you're doing cooking-wise, whether you're stir-frying, making a soup, sauteing, every time you add an ingredient to your hot pan, your hot pot, whatever it is, add a little bit of kosher salt. All right, everyone, so those were our 5 little kitchen cooking secrets, plus a bonus one. They aren't really secrets, so you're welcome to share them with anybody you'd like. They certainly will improve your cooking as soon as you start using them. Hope that was all helpful, and thanks for joining us in our kitchen.